This program presents a lively debate about the future transportation plans for Honolulu. Should we build a rail system, or should we build a new elevated road from the leeward side that would be used by a mix of express buses, carpools that ride free, along with some toll-paying automobiles? These elevated lanes you will hear about in the program are called hot lanes, meaning high occupancy and toll lanes. The city has consistently failed to study hot lanes as an alternative, despite their many advantages, which include lower cost and much more efficiency than rail. In the following discussion, the city representatives present their case for rail, but you will hear for yourself how they are not telling the truth. We have carefully analyzed the city's statements and found at least 21 lies told by the city officials, and we are presenting here a rebuttal to those lies. The lies put forward by City Councilman Gary Okino and City Planner Toru Hamayasu.
Well, rail, if you compare it to a busway or a bus system, it's head and shoulders above something like that in terms of speed, capacity, reliability, safety, capital cost even, operating and maintenance costs, pollution. There's no comparison. There's no comparison in terms of speed.
Speed? He's got to be kidding. If you look at the city's alternative analysis, it shows that for the 19 miles from Kapolei to downtown, it's going to take 65 minutes by train. Now, what kind of speed is that? That's 20 miles an hour.
Wait, he's saying 19 miles in 65 minutes?
Yes.
Capacity.
Capacity is absolutely ridiculous because the biggest capacity is the I-495, New Jersey to New York, okay? 32,000 people an hour in a single lane.
And one lane rail is going to do how many?
The maximum capacity for the proposed rail is about 10,000 riders per hour, which is one-third that of a busway. But the real question is which system will attract more riders, and we maintain the hot lanes will be far more attractive and successful. Another point on capacity is during the non-peak hours, there'll be too much capacity if it's a rail. You'll have a 300-person vehicle rumbling through empty every 6 to 10 minutes. Whereas with a bus, a small bus can be coming through using far less energy and even more frequently or less frequently, more easily adjusted.
Reliability.
Reliability. Just Google rail transit and strike. That's a major headache for rail transit users in the mainland, is every so often they go on strike. They'll be out for 30 days, 60 days. And it takes them so much longer to get ridership back up to where it was after a strike.
If you were to put in a rail system, whatever union is controlling the train is going to have an immense amount of power over the city.
Safety.
Is this a good time to talk about gangs and graffiti and crime around train stations?
Because
it's a magnet for this kind of stuff.
You know, he said it's safe. All rail systems have to have transit police. Doesn't matter where you're talking about, Vancouver, San Francisco, Washington. All rail systems have transit police. You don't have transit police on bus systems.
Are transit police accounted for in the alternatives analysis as part of the budget?
No, they're not mentioned. We've brought that up. It's an issue. It's expensive.
When they put in the blue line for the LA Metro, the eventual bill turned out to be millions of dollars a year to put sufficient transit police to hold the crime down.
Capital cost even.
Saying that the capital cost is less than the highway option, the hot lanes option, is also absurd. It's really laughable to say that a simple elevated highway built by the lowest bidder is going to cost more per mile than a non-bid elevated rail line with trains, computers, electrical transformer stations. Each of the stations 270 feet long and 50 feet wide with elevators, escalators, and stairs. I mean, there can be no comparison. They have a cost for the hot lanes approach of $2.6 billion. That's their forecast. A comparable facility in Tampa, the Tampa Expressway, which just opened in August last year, cost $400 million. When you've got an existing facility that has been built for $400 million, you cannot justify one for 9 times that amount in Honolulu, no matter what the cost of living difference.
Operating and maintenance costs. There's no bus system can recover all of its costs through revenues.
Okay, I mean, where does he get this stuff? Buenos Aires has a bus system, 15,000 buses. They're all privately owned, and to the best of my knowledge, all profitable. Atlantic City's 190 13-passenger buses are private. They're all privately owned and profitable. You've got Hong Kong. All Hong Kong's bus systems are profitable. And for that matter, so are the Communist People's Republic of China has profitable bus systems. We've got throughout Asia and South America profitable bus systems.
Pollution, there's no comparison.
Then you should look at what hot lanes would do for pollution rather than rail. When we get cars on hot lanes traveling at uncongested speeds, the pollution emissions are far less than they are on congested freeways.
So your point is that hot lanes enable cars to run at lower pollution levels than cars stuck in congestion.
And they use less energy too.
Honolulu needs to move, I would say, 200,000 to 300,000 people a day. And only one kind of system can do it, is a high-speed rail system that's grade separated. And that's why, I'm so much in favor of it.
He's talking about moving, as I'm interpreting it, okay, 200 to 300,000 people a day will use transit. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. That's
No way, because why?
Because at the moment, 7% of trips is by public transportation. If you're going to do 20%, that's 3 times the current market share. No metro area in the United States increased the percentage of people using public transportation to commute at all.
His statistic is one of those things that it doesn't make any sense because there is no reference as to what he's talking about. He just comes up with numbers and, nothing makes sense.
It's mathematically impossible for the rail system to serve 200,000 to 300,000 people a day.
We want to affect hundreds of thousands of people. You need a high-capacity system.
If they say, we're going to get such an increase in riders in our city, then they should look at what other cities have done who have put in rail systems in the last 20 years and what has happened to their ridership.
But the public transit use is actually 30% increase since 1995.
Ridership in the bus since 1990 is down. So I want to correct that point. So, the population is increasing and ridership is going down. So people are telling us what they want or they don't. Number one. Number two, total statistic is not correct. 25% of passenger statistics increased.
I thought the laughing here was pretty unprofessional.
Laughing to someone you're in a discussion panel with is rude. It's just very rude.
The consistent theme was, discrediting the professor, discrediting what Panos was saying time and time again, laughing at it, discrediting it.
Very rehearsed.
I see that laughter as the cockiness of someone who thinks they're winning. They don't think they have to debate statistics anymore. They think they've won. They don't care. They've got a team. They all say the same stuff. All these lies and that kind of mockery, that's scary.
From 1990 to 2000, there was a decline in people using transit to commute. Small decline, but a decline.
Whatever percent people rode public transit 20 years ago, it's either the same or less today.
Back in 2000, they predicted that the Las Vegas monorail would produce 54,000 riders per day.
54,000. So 54,000 was predicted. 18,500 is the
Right.
actual.
Right. So there's going to be an increase in transit ridership.
How many do you expect?
We think the new riders is going to be in a neighborhood of about 30 to 40,000 riders.
This inflated number is based on ridership forecasts by consultants whose previous predictions have been wildly inaccurate, overestimating increases in bus riders when in reality we have seen ridership decreases. Forecasting is not a reliable scientific process.
The rail is better in terms of the energy consumption.
The hot lanes have a lower, carbon footprint than if we don't build hot lanes, we build the rail. If you're on a bus, you have a reduction in travel time because you're on a high occupancy lane going 60. All the cars will have a reduction in travel time because if you pay the $1 and you go up on the hot lanes, you travel faster. And if you don't pay the $1, 20% of the cars that went on the hot lanes let you go faster. So everybody goes faster.
2 hot lanes carry as many vehicles as 4 lanes of the congested highway. Okay, and that's the federal government's calculation.
And 2 hot lanes equals 4 regular lanes because we're using a computer-controlled system to keep the hot lanes congestion free. You rip at 60 miles an hour versus congested at whatever the average rate is.
Right.
Well, we're talking about carbon footprint. How much energy is this going to take to construct all of these stations? These monumental stations, how much energy is going to be wasted on that? I heard they even have to build a new power plant.
The peak loads of the transit system coincides with the peak draws of HICO. So it is a worse situation as opposed to your hybrid or electric car that you charge it overnight at essentially free electricity. At that time, HICO could actually give you almost free electricity than the night schedule.
Or the kind of a power plant that is, electricity is generated, they too can get into a better energy or alternative energy sources.
All of Honolulu's electricity is generated by burning petroleum, by far the highest level in the country. And yet the city's cost estimates for rail do not even include the expense of building a new power plant, let alone plans for one that runs on some new unnamed technology.
We definitely need a power plant for this thing. And like the transit police, it's not built into the cost. We really have to build a new power plant to be ready for it, but nobody has budgeted for it.
Vancouver Skytrain carries 250,000 people. Last year it made $2.72 million.
You know, I don't know where that statement comes from because the Vancouver Skytrain is integrated with Vancouver's bus system and ferries. One ticket gets you access to buses and rail. And so you cannot sort out the revenues and differentiate between buses and rail. You can't say it makes a profit because you may know what your expenses are, but you don't know what the revenue is. I don't know where his number comes from.
So is the overall system, bus plus rail,
Yes.
plus SkyTrain, is that operating at a profit?
No, in the aggregate, that loses $240 million a year.
So the question is, where did he come up with this figure?
Yes.
In Vancouver, population is growing, okay? But last year, car usage decreased by 5 billion kilometers.
A reduction in car usage. There is no such thing in Vancouver. They've got the same problem that everybody else has. That's another statement he's just pulling out of thin air. If you go onto the British Columbia government website, all they talk about is the terrible, terrible and increasing traffic congestion that they have. Population has grown by 750,000 people in the lower mainland over the past 20 years, and it is anticipated to grow by 3 million by 2031. And Greater Vancouver residents consistently rate transportation as the number one issue.
So it's a question, where did he come up with this 5 billion kilometers?
The numbers he's using are very misleading and very dangerous for public policy.
Here we have a public elected official that's essentially spewing out some wild numbers, apparently unfounded numbers, on a very significant public works project with tremendous implications.
Let me give you a very practical example. There was one city in the United States that built both busways and a rail system. Let's take Pittsburgh. Okay, they did both an elevated busway and a light rail system. They projected a 50,000 passenger per day ridership for the busway. Their actual ridership now, after 7 years, is 9,500, 1/5 of what they projected.
The busways he talks about, 9,200. The busways most recently are carrying 50,000 passengers a day, twice as much as the light rail line. A totally different result than what you would get from his explanation.
For the light rail system, they projected 30,000 passengers.
The official ridership forecast for the Pittsburgh Light Rail shows the forecast as 90,000 for an average weekday. The actual ridership achieved in the same report was 30,600, and that was 66% less than forecast. Now, Mr. Okino is trying to give the idea that the rail is improving, but the fundamentals are that the latest ridership is down to 23,200. That's down from the 30,000 they did in 1989.
A 9.4% increase from the year before. So people are actually moving from buses to rail.
If we look at the ridership data for Pittsburgh from 1996, we find that bus ridership has actually declined slightly less than rail ridership in the same period. So again, where does he get this stuff?
So what your numbers show is that this public official literally lied in all his statistics.
Shall we say he misspoke? Because he might just be incompetent.
No, he strategically represented the numbers.
Because I never lie.
You know what? Interestingly enough, we're going to be spending about $3.5 billion in the next 25 years on highway improvements as well. You have to talk about the balanced transportation.
But I don't see a balance here. I heard $3 billion for highways, and I heard $3 to $5 billion for rail. Back of the napkin says 50-50, but we only got 7% of the people using rail.
We're going to pay 1/4 of our budget to move optimistically 6 to 8% of our trips. I mean, this doesn't calculate in any logical way. And this is throughout the United States, and it's going to be, of course, the case here. We're not different. We're not Vancouver or anything. We're going to be the poster boy of failure, and actually Honolulu is so small and has such a tiny taxpayer population, we are going to be crushed. And you know, their numbers are so optimistic. When you see the original OMPO study, they said the federal portion was $450 million. Quickly, the mayor started talking about $750 million. You know what the current number of the feds will give us is $1.2 billion. I mean, where are we coming up with these things? I mean, New York got $750 million for New York. You know, it's the #1 system in the nation. The rail system there carries 2/3 of the rail trips of the entire nation. All the other systems that you see, 23 systems of heavy rail and so many light rail, 1/3 in the nation. So everything happens in New York. Exclude New York from the national statistics, and rail is a certifiable loser any way you look at it.
We're projecting in some areas commute time to increase to 3 hours one way.
Okino tried to create some scare tactics by saying that, you know, travel times will be several hours or whatever, 3 hours. Well, your own study says that actually they're not going to be, and worse yet for you, Mr. Okino, the rail is not even competitive with 2030 congestion levels according to the AA.
Rail travel will be slow, according to the city's own alternative analysis, which predicts it will take 1 hour and 6 minutes to go from Pearl Ridge to UH Manoa.
Yes, the time is not that spectacularly faster, but when you got to think about it, it's always that time. Because you have the separate guideway, the travel time would be always the same. That's the sales point.
I thought this was a classic line. The classic line is it's not that spectacularly better, okay, but it's always going to be that way. So that means, I think that was great. That means if you're at 3 in the morning, if you hop on the public transit system, it's still going to be 1 hour and 10 minutes to get to UH.
What he's trying to say is that reliability is important, which is true. But what good is reliability if it takes you 1 hour?
That's exactly.
Right. Why are you going to get out of your car when you're guaranteed 1 hour in the train and you can do it in 20 minutes in your car?
Exactly.
It works. The reliability is important, but it's no good if it's slow reliability.
Toru says that the train goes 55 miles an hour. You just said it's going 22 miles an hour.
It goes for 55 miles an hour for several seconds.
In between stations, taking into account a safe acceleration and a safe braking and the dwell time in the station, it's an average speed of about 22 miles an hour.
There's no whoosh in the train system,
zip.
right?
It's a zip and a whoosh.
There's no zip and whoosh.
There's no
They're
provision for express trains. So everybody's guaranteed to stop at every stop.
It's like you're in a 40-story building and you got to stop at every floor to get to the top.
It doesn't matter if your elevator goes 55 miles an hour, you're going to go step by step. Okay.
And as far as speeds and efficiencies, it can actually be quicker because it accelerates faster, there are smaller buses, and you don't have to have all the monster stations. Give it some ramps at key locations, it goes down, interchanges with the town and goes up. So you have flexibility to use your buses any way you want.
Our major congestion is from beyond the H1, H2 merge to the edge of downtown. If we have people able to travel between those 2 points at 60 miles an hour, and when they come down on the ground, they're in mixed traffic, you don't have to spend too much time at 60 miles an hour before you're going to be there faster than being on the rail line.
The city's own alternatives analysis states that traffic congestion will not be reduced when rail is put in. That's the part I believe that the city is most disingenuous about. Because if you ask the average individual, the average person has somehow been led to believe that traffic is going to be better after rail is running. The general story has been to the public, We need to solve our congestion problem, and rail is going to solve our congestion problem.
Traffic congestion will be far worse in the target year 2030. They still don't say that, except when you look at the tables and the alternatives analysis, and that's what it tells you. You know that traffic congestion is going to be disastrous.
And in the program, Hamayasu belittles studies by Professor Prevedouros of the University of Hawaii about hot lane ramps that would serve the route.
Well, you have to have just a little ramps here and ramps there. That little ramp is not little. Each ramp, if you build it to the standards of the speed that we're talking about, 80 kilometer or 50 miles per hour kind of a thing, the ramp is going to be almost 2,000 feet long. Have you designed any ramp?
But he won't let Panos answer the question and rudely throws in more ridicule.
I designed it, and actually it's going to be about 1,400 feet. I understand.
No, you cannot design it.
I understand. No. I did the design for 20-foot height to come down, and it's 1,400 feet by 2,000.
No, you didn't do the design. You did the
2001
sketch.
asphalt. Let's stop arguing about it.
Ramps are a very important issue that clearly illustrate the advantages of hot lanes over a train. The city has never included adequate busway ramps in its biased alternative analysis, and yet has the nerve to criticize an engineer who has done such studies. You see, with several ramps along its length, the Guideway can allow buses to drive on or off and directly bring passengers to where they are going without a transfer.
If there is one thing that people resent the most, is transfers. And rail is walk, bus, rail, wait, out, bus, walk to go to work. Nobody wants to do. We have very busy lives to be doing this trip chaining.
In 1990, we did a Lee and Elliott study that showed that even with a busway, you'd have 60% of the people transferring. Because you cannot possibly have buses go from people's where they live onto the busway. It's impossible. You're still creating a spine where you have to have circulators come to the spine. It doesn't matter what kind of vehicles you have. You're talking about a high-capacity spine, and it doesn't reduce transfers. It doesn't reduce transfers. In fact, the estimate at that time was 60% transfer. You must remember that study, right?
Yeah.
This is another red herring. The 1990 busway survey was done as a run-up for the EIS for the 1992 rail. And so again, the mayor talked to this other client-focused company and said, we want the rail to win the tournament here, so that the busway has to fail. And so you got a grossly over-engineered busway design with stations on it, etc. And if you build stations on a busway and the busway never comes down to the ground, of course you got to transfer.
The next step is in the process of trying to get the federal funding. It's called the New Starts grant program. And what it is that we have to advance our project to the next level of engineering called preliminary engineering.
His presentation is essentially backwards because he talks about preliminary engineering. Why are we spending millions to do preliminary engineering before the environmental impact statement even exists, let alone having it approved? Now, what they are doing is that they are fast-tracking it by doing EIS and PE, preliminary engineering, side by side. But we are spending a lot of public money without really knowing that the system fits. But if for some reason we reject the EIS, part of all of the preliminary engineering could be useless.
Thrown out the window.
Right.
People should contrast what Toru is saying here about the process with the mayor saying that it's a done deal, because it is obvious. They're talking now about the feds have yet to make up their mind how much they're going to give to this project. The idea that this is a done deal, it's far from it.
We really want to solve the problem. The good thing is that Tampa solved it for us. They had Tampa downtown, and they had Brandon, about 150,000 people, a lot of congestion, level of service F. What did they do? They built a reversible expressway towards Tampa in the morning, out of Tampa to Brandon in the afternoon. Pure traffic engineering, peaks and valleys of demand, heavy demand in the afternoon, heavy in the morning, heavy demand in the afternoon. You make a system that plays into people's travel behavior and not trying to switch their behavior into rail. People want solutions for congestion. We're giving them pie-in-the-sky alternatives at $6 billion with theoretical high-capacity numbers. 60 miles per hour hot lanes, 10 miles in 10 minutes. Nothing can beat that.
In this way, our entire island will benefit from an effective traffic solution that will cost far less and be much more efficient than rail.